do you need Japanese to survive in Japan?
Oh my gosh, that's such a big one.
All of a sudden, I'm getting a text from my dad, like, we are in the back of a police car. This is not a joke.
I didn't know what this man said to me. And at that moment, I was just so embarrassed.
Hello and welcome back to the Deskwarmers Podcast. My name is Matthew.
And I'm Ike. And I hope you guys had a chance to watch episode 1 and 2. Today is episode 3, and we do have another guest, one of our good friends from Japan. Matthew, you want to introduce her?
Yeah, for sure. Today we have our good friend Bethany. Welcome in, Bethany, to the podcast.
Round of applause. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great. We're so happy to have you. Did you get a chance to watch episode 1 and 2?
I did. I listened to it on the way home today when I was in rush hour traffic.
Ooh, how do we sound?
Pretty good. I mean, I didn't even have to turn my car speaker up all the way. So.
Ayo, nice. So you're coming in from Arizona, is that correct?
Yep. Go Southwest.
How
Forks
is that?
up.
Forks up. Sun Devils?
It's good. I mean, it's good to be back, honestly, because I was away for so long. But it is a little weird, though, because I feel like when I graduated, I was like, see ya. I'm never coming back to this place. Adios. But, you know, here I am.
And how many years were you actually in Japan for?
So on the JET program, it was 3 years, but I had been to Japan twice prior.
And
so
you
like
arrived
total, probably more like 4.
And you arrived before anyone else in our city, right? Like way before I even got there in terms of months.
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
think I got there I think it was the end of June, and then we had the 2-week quarantine in Tokyo at the hotel.
COVID times.
And then I think, because that would be when my contract started. So then I officially started like working would be like July, and it was in the middle of the summer. So I think that's a little bit different from you guys, because I didn't just get like thrown into teaching that first week. I had like a month of nothing.
But I mean, you had a very interesting case though, where you're one of the only people in our area and ended up getting like a lot of schools, right?
Yeah, so I am a city ALT, so I did elementary and middle schools, and I covered all of them for the city, and there were 3 of us there. So me and these 2 other ALTs split the workload of all the schools. So I think I was going to 12.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, I was like in a different school every day. And then like so many self-intros, the Jiko Shokais, like how many times can I give a PowerPoint about myself? Because then it's at that point, I know every single question I'm going to get asked.
Yeah.
And like, I have nothing new to say. I'm like, please don't make me talk about myself anymore.
I had a very similar situation when I was parading my mom around. She came to visit, which I'm so glad that she did. She went to all of my schools, of course, only 3 schools, but to every single class in one of these schools. It's like, this is my mom. And they ask very similar questions, and she has very similar answers. And then, you just get into a rhythm, right? For the Jiko Shokai.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
There's certain times in Japan, like especially when you're leaving, when you're first getting there, whenever you have a new school, and it almost just becomes a rhythm, right? That you have to keep doing the same thing on repeat. And it does wear you down a little bit, but you can do some fun things with it too, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Then you
like
kind
your
of
Jiko Shokai, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, I know, especially for my final lesson, that was a little bit more fun, but I think it might have been Matthew's idea that I stole. I don't remember, but I had all the students draw me.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite.
I think that was Matthew's idea, and that was the most fun because I got a bunch of like some really quality like, illustrations of me and like basically free profile picture art.
I know, dude. I still have those pictures of me.
Yeah, I kept them too.
Yeah, that's crazy. I wish I had them up here.
So did any of them roast you into annihilation, or were they like like pretty good, like flattering, like, yeah, like I like this picture.
Some were a little rough. I know a lot of kids had trouble drawing my hairstyle, they said. And I don't know why, but I guess they hadn't really drawn some sort of up type thing. And
is that what you describe that as?
I don't know. Even good artists, though, they really couldn't do it. I did have one kid, though, that actually drew Hitler on a picture. So
wait, instead of you?
And it was even labeled, Hitler.
Where did that come from? It was labeled Hitler?
Yeah, so I don't know what to make of that, but
oh my gosh. Maybe the kid just doesn't like authority
white.
or
yeah, you win
Hitler
some
was
and you
white.
lose some.
Hitler was white. Yeah, that's crazy.
But most were really good.
I had kids draw me as well, but I never got that. I got some anime characters though.
Yeah, some of those kids are really good at art too. I was impressed.
Very, very talented.
Yeah.
That's like every chance I'd get to like have them draw something. I did this one activity that was okay. Like I say a sentence out loud, and then they have to listen to the sentence and then draw the picture that they hear. And then after a minute, I reveal the picture. So they're like racing against the clock to draw this, but also they're using their English skills to listen. And I got some very interesting drawings off of that, but it was more or less just an opportunity for me to see these kids' artistic abilities.
So I guess I do have a question about that for you both, and maybe Bethany as well, since you kind of have this teaching background and still doing some teaching as well. How did you typically come up with your like lesson plans? Because even besides the self-intro, I know sometimes you would have maybe a lesson where it's just you as the teacher, but how did you get inspiration for those?
I mean, do you want me to go first? Like,
yeah.
Okay. It really depended because I had 5 different schools. So some of them, it was like, I just did whatever the JTE. So that's like the Japanese teacher of English. That's like actually teaching the class. You're just the assistant.
Mm-hmm. As an
so
ALT.
Some of the times I would just do whatever they asked me to do, usually just like conversation or like pronunciation stuff. And like very occasionally I would like be like, oh, I have this presentation or I have this game. Would it be okay if we used it? And like, I don't think I was ever told no. And I don't know if that's because they actually wanted me to, or if they felt too awkward to say no. But I pretty much would just come like with something. In the beginning, it had to do with things I was doing on the weekend. So like trips I was taking, or like if there was an upcoming holiday, like Halloween or something, I would have something just ready to go, just like almost like ambush them right before the lesson. Like, can I do this for 10 minutes? And they'd be like, okay. So for the middle schools, junior high schools, it was definitely more just like very short. Like maybe I had the floor for 5 minutes, like max, because they had a lot of stuff to get through. They were very test focused.
Through their curriculum?
Yeah. I mean, well, it really depends though, because I did go to one school that was like a mountain school, and that JTE would do all the testing and stuff on the days I wasn't there. So when I was there, we would just do like conversation activities and really work on speaking. Yeah. So that was nice, but that's an ideal situation.
We love the schools that utilize their foreigner that gets sent to them.
But other than that, I mean, I think I got most of my inspiration from watching some of the, I hate to say this, but like better JTEs conduct their lessons and what they did. Like I was getting a master's degree at the time when I first started. That was in
right?
TESOL. So yeah, that's teaching English to speakers of other languages. And the main consensus right now is to learn a new language, you need to use it, and you need to have opportunities to use the new things that you're learning in an authentic way, which is very difficult to do.
So what kind of authenticity?
Try to like,
is authenticity there just like speaking with the ALT or practicing natural conversation, like ordering at a restaurant, or buying clothes. That's when I took foreign languages in America, like I took high school Chinese, and it was always just those types of dialogues.
That's a good question. I would say that's not authentic. Just because, I mean, like you're looking at what they're learning for ordering at a cafe or something, and it's very rigid, and it's not usually how we speak. Like, what would you like? Like, I don't feel like most people at like a Starbucks, when you walk up, would it go like, "Hi, sir, what would you like?" It would be like, "How are you doing today? Like, what can I get started for you?" Like that kind of thing.
Oh, what can I get started for you? I would love to see that in like a foreign language textbook.
So, I mean, if you want to make it authentic, there's ways, like if you can find like audio bites from conversations that actually happened. So let's say you record at a cafe, whatever country, America, Canada, whatever, you record it and then you turn that into a lesson. Like you're recording someone actually ordering.
That's such a good idea.
That would be more authentic.
Yeah.
I think that is a good idea. What I've found though is whenever some sort of like slang or maybe like more casual phrase is implemented, I think a lot of the students almost think of that as the norm per se, or like especially in Japan when they're really focused on grammar, right? I think it's almost difficult to try to bring out newer phrases. I know at my school we had 2 ALTs, so me and one other. And he would always use like "my pleasure," right? When someone would say something, the phrase. And so the students like knew what it meant, and then like it was difficult to say if they like, I guess, would use it or not, or even if they would know how to use it though.
Yeah. I feel phrases like that, and knowing your co-ALT, phrases like that are sometimes conscious choices that we as natural speakers make that almost show our own personality and definitely our backgrounds and the different places that we've come from and what we've picked up. So like saying like "my pleasure" is probably, it is something that he said a lot, your co-ALT.
Yeah.
And no one really says that a lot, but we definitely have our own ways of speaking that students probably tried to pick up after listening to us long enough. Certainly had to have happened.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think though that like the way that I would speak with students or even like the JTE is not how I would necessarily speak with a native speaker. Just because like there's so many cultural references and jokes and stuff. It's just like trying to explain it all.
Yes. The nuances and the subtleties.
Well,
okay, like for example, I used to come in and I'm sorry if this woman watches this, whatever. She used to come in and I would like she'd be like, "Wow, you look so tired." And I hated this woman. I was like, "Actually, I slept like 10 hours." And she would just be like, "Oh," or like whatever. And I realized after time, I think she was taking a very literal translation of like "otsukare-sama desu." But she's just telling me I look like haggard. I'm like,
well, it's definitely like cultural thing too, because I know for us, like at our desk and stuff, and I'd always laugh when a teacher would come up to me and be like, "I know you're so busy right now." They're just like, I know you're doing so much, but like, do you have 1 second to spare for me? And I'm just like over here, like
you're like on your phone.
Yeah, I'm like over here.
You're watching Shingeki no Kyojin or like
playing chess or something, and I'm like, I'm like, I can.
Well,
help.
I can pause my Shingeki, but.
So it's always funny to me though, because like that's something that they would do to each other, right? So it's nice to be included in those type of like cultural introductions, but at the same time, it might not fully translate to like what we're used to, I guess.
Oh, we live on the edge of a knife as an ALT, sitting there at your desk. Are they going to come up and they're going to respect us, our cultural norms, or are we going to have to kind of have this interaction in a Japanese cultural norm sense? Kind of funny that way.
Because
that's a good point.
Yeah. I know for maybe the city or BOE ALTs as well, I think you had to get your incon, like your stamp every single day, right? At whatever school you were at. Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that something you had to go about like a certain way, or was it pretty casual? I'm curious for like this example.
Well, did you guys not do that?
No, we never did that.
So we just
high
had
school ALTs. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Matthew. But we had like one book is what I had.
Yeah, we would. It was in the office, and honestly, I didn't have to do it every day. Sometimes I did it like once every 3 months. So I just incon book, incon book, incon book, incon book.
Okay, so we did that. Like at every school, there was like the staff book of everybody, and I had my own page, and I would like incon, stamp my name to mark I was there on all the days I was there. So it'd be like once a week. But then when I left at the end of the day, I had a separate sheet that I had to get the vice principal, the Kyoto sensei, to stamp. And like, it was kind of annoying because like the Kyoto sensei is one of the busiest people, if not the busiest people in this person in the school. So like trying to track this guy down.
The Kyoto sensei is in charge of all of the teachers. He's kind of like their leader.
So I will say it was kind of nice though, just having that, because it was a required interaction. So even if I was ignored all day long, at least the Kyoto sensei was going to tell me bye at the end of the day.
Yeah, you couldn't just get in, get out. You had to talk to Kyoto sensei.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely feel like there were some days when I just wouldn't speak to anyone though. Like I had interactions with some desks around me, and like we had a bread lady at our school, as I like to call her, who was a very nice lady, and go up to there and purchase some bread. But outside of those, sometimes it was difficult.
Definitely in August, especially August. That's like the dead month in Japanese schools, and you still have to go. Bethany, you worked at the BOE. So all of your August days were in City Hall, correct?
No.
Oh, I'm proven wrong.
So, well, I mean, there were some times where we would meet at City Hall in like a meeting room or whatever. Usually it was when Challenge English was close. So like in the summer, I don't even remember when Challenge English was. I think it was definitely July. Sometime in July. So if it was leading up to July, they might do those meetings. But if it was after Challenge English, like you're going to go sit at your school at your desk, and it's going to be you and Kyoto sensei and no one else. And you're going to sit there and you're going to do nothing all day.
Well, this brings us to a very good question that I would love to ask you. Or Ike, if you know the question, can you take it away?
Well, I've heard, so you all stayed a little bit longer than I did, and there's a phrase that's gone around called magnet gate. And I'm unfamiliar with what that term means. So I'd love to ask our guest, Bethany, what is
I think this is the question of the week.
This is the question of the week, yeah.
This isn't what I was going to ask, but...
Oh, I thought that was the question time.
No.
I think he was going to ask me what I did while I was Deskwarming, but...
Yeah.
That has to be the last question. That has to be.
We're going to save that for the end?
That has to be at the end, yeah.
Okay. So,
I can
Magnet Gate.
Talk about
question of the week.
Gate.
Discord question of the week submitted by our very own Ike.
I really wanted to know.
This involves the aforementioned sensei that I didn't really like that much. But I spent so much time trying to be her friend, trying to get her to like me. So I had like one last ditch effort. I went on this trip to Hokkaido, and we were on the cheapest airline like possible. We were like on a tight budget, like, yeah, we're going to go see the snow festival and that's it kind of thing. And I didn't have any room in my suitcase for the omiyage, the souvenirs. So I ended up buying a few of these Hokkaido Snow Festival magnets because she had told me, I really want to go to the Snow Festival, blah, blah, blah. So I got her a magnet from the Snow Festival. I had the date like And I was like, yes, I'm going to give this to her when I go back and tell her I remembered that she wanted to go and blah, blah, blah. So I come back to school and I give her the magnet and she seems happy enough, whatever. And like, I go about my business. That was in like, I think February. So I leave in, I think I left in July, like late June, early July. I go home and my now husband starts going to that school as the ALT to take my place. And he sends me a zoomed in picture of that magnet on the communal staff whiteboard. And that teacher got transferred and doesn't even work there anymore. And she left behind my magnet.
And all memories of you, probably. So
it continues. So my husband takes the magnet and he works at the new school that she's working at.
No.
And he's like, are you forgetting something? And he gave her back the magnet. It was like, my wife got you this magnet, blah, blah, blah. She felt so bad. She lines me when I'm back in America apologizing for not taking the magnet.
Oh my gosh.
And
wow,
now we're all back home now, so I don't know what she
That's
did.
Hilarious.
Magnet,
it's in the trash can for sure.
That's the magnet.
Oh my gosh, Magnet Gate. Wow. Yeah, she didn't care about you at all.
No, she did not. She really did not.
And then when forced to confront that transgression, she was so apologetic.
Honestly, I mean, I try not to think it was anything personal. I just think like a lot of the JTEs, the ALTs are like a revolving door. So sometimes people don't go out of their way to get to know you, and that's okay, whatever.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Like, there'll be others.
There was a part of that story you mentioned. It was an H word. It was a husband word.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I have not announced it on social media.
Oh,
this is the perfect time. You can just link the
never
podcast.
mind.
You just link the podcast.
That's okay. I said
no,
it.
we can cut it out.
It's the whole story. It's too late.
In the story.
It's the whole story.
It's too late.
It's too late.
No, it's not like a secret or anything. I just like didn't want my extended family to get offended because I already had an incident at Thanksgiving. Someone saw my wedding ring and they were like, "Oh my gosh." But so okay.
As long as you're okay.
My husband, yeah, it's whatever.
Okay.
He'll be happy to be featured. Honestly.
Okay.
I met my husband in Japan as another ALT, and he's from the UK. So we ended up eloping before we went home so that I could have my own like 90-day fiance situation, except it's more 90-day spousal visa. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say about that. I think a lot of people form relationships during the JET program.
Apparently.
Yeah, I was one of them as well. So,
freaking Ike over here.
Yeah, so we'll have her on and your husband too at another time as well. Yeah. It would be fun.
Oh dear.
They who must not be named.
Yeah, we haven't dropped.
Definitely like not something I was looking for, but I do think there's something to be said about people who both want to move to the same country, do the same thing. Like you already have a massive thing in common.
That's right.
And then just like somebody who completely, totally understands your experience out there too. Cause that was like a pretty big chunk of my life so far. It's kind of weird coming back home with the reverse culture shock and like not using the little Japanese lingo and sort of things I've picked up and kind of having to reset.
Yeah, it's Choto Mendoku Sai.
I do feel like, though, to that point, Bethany, that we got really lucky because in our city, we all formed like a really close group of friends. And I know some of my other friends that also ended up in Japan, their cities didn't have as many people in them per se.
Interesting.
Or they would only have one ALT per like area. Or even in our area, we had the one ALT who lived more kind of in the Inaka even more. Yeah. And so it's difficult depending on where you get placed to form connections. But I think in our case, we got very lucky that we were able to instantly have the bond of, hey, we're all thrown in this foreign country together. We all have somewhat similar interests. Like, we're basically like forced to hang out, right?
Forced family.
So it was.
Yeah, they're definitely like, sometimes in those situations you might think, I would never be friends with this person at home.
I get what you mean, but
I don't mean it in a bad way. Like, I just mean like maybe you don't really have that much in common, and like you're kind of just hanging out because you both speak English, you know?
But the most beautiful relationships can develop from that. Friendships, more than just friendships. Like, there are some people that I would probably never, exactly what you said, never like, not like seek out, but never find myself in contact with. Like Australians. When am I going to see an Australian?
Like, just certainly a
I live in
diverse
Kansas.
amount of English speakers, like people from South Africa too.
Yeah.
Like all over.
And I want to shout out this bear right here, Kumamon, and Kumamoto Prefecture, especially for having a very good community and going out of their way with our Kuma Jet is what it's called. It's the non-prefecture like social organization that's kind of like in connection with the prefecture, like a little bit. It's kind of weird how they do it, but just getting the entire prefecture together for certain events and getting people out of their way to connect with each other. So I'm shouting out Kuma Jet.
I did really enjoy
Shout out to Kuma Jet.
Yeah, I would also shout them out. The yearly like cabin experience where we'd all
cabin
go to the lake, and that was it a lake? Was it the ocean?
It was the ocean.
That was
there
the
was
ocean.
a beach. There were jellyfish there. Yeah.
That was the ocean. Never mind. But we had a yearly ocean experience, I guess, as well. And so that would have a huge turnout, though. And
huge.
And so that was another good
massive
time
a lot of people
to meet other people as well. So there are a lot of opportunities, I think, if you are able to like put yourself out there and just show up, really is what it comes down to.
If you're listening to this and you're on the JET program or you're about to be in the JET program, worried like, oh my gosh, am I going to find friends? Like, what's going to happen? I bet that maybe you already know of a social organization or an arm of other ALTs, like in a Discord group or in a Facebook group or a line chat. Seek it out. Really, it makes your time in Japan like fly by, which is kind of, it might be a good thing or a bad thing, but like you're hanging out with friends. It's a lot of fun. Just figuring out stuff to do outside of work.
Yeah. And I think our group got really lucky too, is because we used all of our like Nenkyu, which is like paid time off, like to go on like trips around Japan as well. And so
first I thought you were gonna say money.
Well,
we did use all of our money.
That was where most of our money went, was to these trips. So the jet salary it's definitely sufficient to live by, but it's nothing extravagant, was my experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was like how we really became friends, like me and you, because I was planning a trip to Tokyo and then you kind of just like invited yourself.
Yeah, I was basically like, can I go?
And like booked your own hotel and like and then that was pretty fun though.
That's how I became friends with Ike and his fiance. Like his fiance was like, "Oh, I'm thinking of going to Kagoshima," and then Ike is like, "I want to go," and then I'm like, "I want to go."
Yeah, and this was before dating.
This was my first day in Japan.
Yeah, and I remember when Matthew was like, "I'm on board," I was like, "You're crazy! You just got here," but you're down. So that was We'll have to talk about that trip later as well.
Travel with people, absolutely.
Yeah. While we're on the topic, Bethany, I want to know about your favorite trip that you've been on within the country of Japan on the JET program.
I mean, I wasn't gonna say Korea, so that's okay. You didn't have to. You didn't have to.
It was fun.
Down.
What are you talking about? That was fun.
I got so sick on that.
Okay,
ferry.
No, we had a good time.
Busan was awesome.
Busan was great.
Watching Train to Busan,
And then going on the train to
or-
Busan?
No, we watched it in Seoul, and then we got on the train to Busan. Anyway, that's not even like a top 10, so don't worry. I was on a trip within Japan.
That's rough.
It's so hard to pick one, honestly. Like, so hard. Like, I think it's hard to beat that first year when everything was so new. But, I mean, like, Kyoto was so fun. We saw so much. Hokkaido and the snow festival, it was so amazing that I took my husband. We went again because he didn't go with us the first time. We didn't know each other, so no bad blood there. Gosh, I'll probably say the snow festival in Hokkaido was my favorite, but I mean, I don't think I've had a bad trip in Japan.
Yeah, that's really good.
Referring to traveling.
What would you? Okay, I don't know what you refer to otherwise.
Anyways, so my favorite part though is because the three of us, we all went to Hokkaido together on this Hokkaido part 1, because I know you had 2 parts, Bethany, but I really enjoyed us being there, and I would say my favorite memory though was the crab, because we went to all you can eat crab, and
famous for crab up there.
And if you don't know, in Japan they have a lot of all you can eat and all you can drink, which is great. So you can even bundle. You can get a bundle deal here.
It's a little bundle rooski.
It's a little bundle. But the crab sit-in, Bethany, how did you feel about eating this much crab?
Is there a crab sit-in?
Do you just mean like the amount of crab I was consuming?
Yeah.
Well, so it was like an hour, 8,000 yen or something.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's say $65, whatever. All you can eat of this crab, but it wasn't just crab. And honestly, like, I'm a little traumatized from the crab because like, if you're expecting snow crab, like, yeah, they have a snow crab, but then they had these hairy crabs, and it was everywhere. Like, there was hair. There was so much crab hair. I didn't like,
Ew.
And I'm trying to eat these crabs, and there's hair like all over my mouth, and I just like, I think they're called like Chinese hairy crabs or something.
I got so like, I don't know. I was at the wrong table during that dinner. Paige was over there with you guys cooking up all the crab.
Oh, you're like just
and I was like two seats over.
Master.
I was 2 seats over at the different grill.
I was with your
nobody
table,
wanted
Matthew.
Nobody wanted to like step up.
Like, we were like so much, and then it's because it's honestly my fault because there was all these species of crab, and I'm like, oh, like I've never tried anything else, so I get this hairy crab, and I didn't realize the hair was going to be falling out at the rate that it was. Like it's so messy. And there was like some other crabs, I don't know the types. They were like super spiky where you're trying to cut them open and you like cut yourself and you're bleeding and you're like, oh my gosh.
Wait, did that happen?
I'm gonna get like tetanus. Yeah.
But you just have to keep going. You just have to keep eating.
I did endure, and I gave this place a shot the next time I went, and I gotta say, both times I feel like I got food poisoning and was horrifically ill. And to this day, I'm so good. Like, I don't ever have to eat crab again. I'm done.
So you wouldn't go back, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, I 100% go back.
You'd go back.
Oh, you tried again?
She'd go back.
I mean, 3 strikes and you're out.
I tried it the second time, even though I got so sick and was done. And another one of our friends was down for the count like all day.
Oh my God, that was
after that place.
Bad.
Like, I can't even
he couldn't do anything.
I can't even be mad at the place that you get sick. Like, it was so gross.
Well, they had like
so much
they
crab.
had like raw.
So much
They
crab.
had raw meats everywhere because
And it was all tour groups.
Yeah,
all groups of like 12.
And
I like we were like sat by people too, and so I like.
Oh,
when
this
you
place
crack
was disgusting.
Open your crab,
Oh,
like, It's like a projectile object. Like
Yeah.
I literally cracked this crab open, and the meat and stuff goes flying over next to me into this girl's hair, and I didn't say a word. Like I just kept going. I was like, oh my gosh, like because I was probably covered in it too. Like
Oh my
there's
gosh.
no shield.
Projectile crab.
Oh, it's so different, right? Just cooking all.
We should note the reason we had crab there is because Hokkaido was famous for its crab
It's famous.
and seafood. Yeah.
You have to get it. And like people in Kumamoto were asking, like, did you eat the crab? They were like making sure that I ate
If you're
the crab.
gonna go, you might as well get the all-you-can-eat crab and like get a little bit of food poisoning. Like we only live once, you know.
Yeah, you sacrifice a little bit.
When are you gonna do that again?
One of my favorite parts about that trip, Bethany, you were so pumped to go to a little town called Shiraoi. Do you not remember?
I don't remember either.
Do you not remember going to the Ainu Museum, Upapoi in Shiraoi?
Well, I didn't know the name of the town.
Come
Because
on.
it was like
I was
the
lost.
journey
It was
to get
far.
there because it's like the Aipopo, right?
Upapoi.
Oop. Okay, I swear I've forgotten every like morpheme I've learned in Japanese.
Well, I mean,
okay.
that's Ainu language, so I guess I don't blame you.
I mean,
Yeah.
it probably. I mean, I think it's in katakana on the thing, but
Well, hold on. I have.
oh, you're gonna double check.
No, I'm not double checking. I'm gonna pull.
Wait, you have him.
I'm pulling out a visual aid.
Is that the turnip?
Oh
They had a turnip.
no,
mascot
it's
there.
wait, is it a turnip?
These are the
Oh.
Ainu playing cards that I
Wait,
have.
that's so cool.
Do you not
Wait,
remember I
that's-
got
yeah,
these? And they have all the things.
I
on
thought it
there.
was their turnip mascot or whatever it was.
Oh,
I have that thing on a keychain somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you want to know that Ape means fire, it's also the 7 of spades. So
That's cool. I want
No,
those.
I mean that museum was absolutely amazing.
yeah, incredible.
10 out of 10. If you're in Hokkaido,
Worth
make
the
a trip down
Worth the trip.
to the museum. It's okay if you forget the name like I did, because you can just Google Ainu Museum Hokkaido and it will definitely be the first result.
Oha means soup.
That's very useful.
Peker means clear.
Okay.
Ike,
Yeah.
you are my Ikor
What is
Is
that?
that friend?
treasure.
Treasure. That's so
Oh.
nice.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Matthew.
I think that said Ikoro, but
Well, some of us can't read. Wait. Upopo means song. It means song.
unless
Unless Upopoi is the name of the museum.
okay.
Anyway,
It's-
sorry, that was a little
okay.
off track. Such a cool museum if you like indigenous cultures, and they were even practicing traditional arts, and you can go and see them like whittle and like fish and like gut the fish and hang them to dry. It's very, very cool.
It was nice.
We shot an arrow.
Yes.
A lot of fun things. I do have a segue, Matthew, given all this
Okay.
language skills.
Oh,
Now, what we haven't talked about on the podcast is, do you need Japanese to survive in Japan?
oh my gosh, that's such a big one.
It's a good question, right? Because in our group of friends, we had a lot of different like levels of language knowledge and experience and goals. And so I know, hey, Bethany, as our guest, what was your, how much Japanese do you think is necessary to survive?
Can we go around and say
I
our
mean-
levels? When I got to Japan, I knew how to read kana, like katakana and hiragana, and that was it.
And for me, I majored in Japanese, and then
Okay.
I was like N3 when I got there, like
Okay.
low N3 probably, and then I left and I barely passed N2. I shouldn't have passed, but I did pass.
Oh,
I shouldn't have.
too humble.
And Bethany,
Ike has finally achieved the goal, the watching anime without subtitles.
that was the motivation. Yeah.
So I studied Japanese for 2 years before going. But I wouldn't say that I was any really good at it, because for one, it was just like a minor, it wasn't even a minor in Japanese. It was a minor in Asian studies, actually, because my school didn't have
Me too.
minor for Japanese. So with all the other work, I mean, if you're going through college, finishing up like your last year, it is so much. I had to write a thesis. It was just like Japanese kind of got put on the back burner, unfortunately. So I would say, I want to say I wasn't quite N3. Like, I definitely should have been after 2 years of study, but I was probably like a high N4. Yeah.
What about when you left, though, Bethany?
Oh, when I left, I also barely passed N2 by the skin of my teeth and did not deserve it. But
and just as a side note, for those who don't know, the different N levels. So there's this JLPT, or the Japanese Language Proficiency Test, and N5 is the lowest, and then N1 is the highest. So we were all kind of in the middle there.
Mm-hmm. I was towards the lower end. I think when I ended up leaving Japan, I never took the JLPT because my mom came to visit. Shout outs on the test day. And I would have probably passed N4, and I probably should have studied my butt off for N3. I probably could have done that by the time I left, but I did not do that.
Mm-hmm. And the JET program, if you pass, is it N3 or higher? They'll actually pay back for the test fee. Is that right?
Is it N4? Something like that.
Either way.
I don't know where it starts. I don't know if it's like all of them or if it starts with N3.
Okay. Well, someone will have to fact check me, but there is some sort of
in the comments,
some payback system for if you pass one of the language tests.
I did do that for N3 and N2.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to push us back.
I think you just like...
Yeah, what was that?
Oh, I was just going to say, it's pretty easy. There's an application you print out from the JET program website. You could ask like your Tantosha, your supervisor, or whatever. And after you get your results, you fill it out, you send a copy of your results, and then they just direct wire transfer it into your bank account.
Yeah.
I would love to push us back to Ike's question. Do you think Japanese is necessary for living in Japan?
No.
Okay, so if we mean like absolutely necessary, no. But it also heavily depends where you're at. But I mean, I feel like, Matthew, you might be a better person to ask this just because you came in with nothing, right? Basically nothing.
Well, yeah.
A
little more than nothing.
Real quick, Matthew, before you answer that, to give you a perspective of Matthew's level when we arrived to Japan, and sorry to throw you under the bus a little bit, but you were at the gas station, and at the gas station, you can do the people will actually fill the gas for you. And you'll like roll down your window and tell them how much you want.
Is this when we were in Fukuoka?
I don't remember where it was. It was like you had just gotten there though, and you were in your car. I was with you. We were going somewhere, and you pull up, and you don't even know what they're asking, right? They come up and they're like, "How much gas do you want?"
Well, okay,
Japanese.
just to clarify real quick that those are the full service stations, but you still, if there's a katakana like seruf, you can go pump your gas by yourself. You don't have to go to the full service ones because they are also more expensive. But anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Bethany. But we pulled into one with the service or whatever, and the guy comes up. He's like, "How much gas do you want?" And I remember Matthew just he fumbled a little bit, and then when they were asking if they wanted to pay with card or credit, and so like certain scenarios like that are maybe a little more difficult, but I think it was fine for the most part, and you're able to get your motivation across still.
Okay, I remember this situation very specifically. That was not on me. That was on you guys. We were in the car. Both of you.
I there?
You were in the car too. We were headed to Fukuoka. You, me, Ike, and
No. It wasn't Bethany. It was. I'm gonna say it was Sam.
Yeah, Bethany, Ike, Sam, and Matthew were in the car together driving to Fukuoka
typhoon trip?
during the typhoon, and we pull in. We had just missed the turnoff exit going to Fukuoka City, where you have to go under the freeway, okay? And I'm almost out of gas, and I'm pulling up to this gas station. I've never been to this specific service, this specific company, okay? And I drive in, and you guys are yelling at me. You're like, go this way, go that way. And I drive in, I'm like, I need to get gas. So I go in, I roll down the window, and this guy is not saying anything that I have ever practiced before. I don't even know what he's asking me. And I'm like, I don't know. And then I was so flustered that I couldn't do anything. So I think you guys did it for me. Well, I probably said I wanted Monton service.
I have no recollection of this.
I don't think Bethany was there. I think it was the three
I'm
of
gonna
us.
say,
but
I'm gonna say I wasn't there.
I think I remember this very clearly.
Matthew, this happened to you a few times, because I know when you went through the McDonald's parking lot as well, and they asked you a question about what you wanted, and I think you got so flustered you just drove away.
Sorry, you keep saying stories about me without having me input. Well, I guess I am inputting. You weren't there for that one. That was just something that I had told you.
Yeah, maybe it was
sometimes we just.
I was at.
I was at
Yoshinoya, and I couldn't read the sizes of the bowls. And that was very early on, but I mastered the drive-through before you ever did.
No, that's okay, Matthew. One time, the drive-through lady told me to please wait in Keigo, like the "oshosho omachi kudasai."
Yeah.
And I didn't hear it because I didn't really know Keigo, and I just started ordering, and then she repeated it again louder, and I actually wanted to die. And I never went through a drive-through again. That was the first and last. I went inside every time after that.
All right, I have one last story, and then please, Matthew, we can get back on track.
Is this going to be another story about how I don't know Japanese?
No, this one is me not knowing Japanese, so don't worry. Because what Bethany said the first and last, and I think she's gonna know here. When I first got to Japan, you'll hear.
The internet story?
Yeah, the internet story. So I first got to Japan. I'm trying to set up my internet. It's an awful process. I have to go to the supermarket, or it's not supermarket. What is it even called? The Eon?
The post office?
The Eon?
Yeah, I had to go to the Eon. I don't know.
Oh.
And the shopping mall. Thank you. The shopping mall. And
Eon information.
It took like 2 months for someone to come to my apartment. And at this time, I was in a phase where anyone that would say, Nihongo jouzu, I would say, sekai de ichiban jouzu, which means I am the best at Japanese in the world.
So they're telling you that you're good at Japanese.
So
first,
this is
really common.
Yeah, it's really common. So you could say something like, hello, like konnichiwa, and they'd say, jouzu desu. And so all of the Japanese people really freak out when you speak Japanese, or a lot of
this
them.
is especially common in more rural areas, I think, because they're just not expecting us to know any Japanese.
And I didn't really have a good response. Like at first I was just like, no. But eventually I got a little full of myself. And so I thought it was a funny joke to say, Nihongo, or sekai de ichiban jouzu. And I said this to the internet man who was in my house. And he is currently plugging some wire in. He's like, like jouzu, you're really good. And I say that to him. And whatever came out of his mouth next, I did not understand a word. I didn't know what this man said to me. And at that moment, I was just so embarrassed because I just said, I am the best at Japanese in the world. And then this man, I just had no clue. It whooshed past me. And the rest, the next 30 minutes this man was in my apartment, I did not say a word. I was
you stopped speaking Japanese for good.
Silent. And then after that, I never said that phrase again. So
and you also never got your internet set up.
Yeah, and he didn't set up my internet. He stuck some wire in my wall. It hit like a blocker or something, and then he pulls it out and says, sorry, I can't give you internet. And then he just proceeds to leave and says, "Oh, I'll come back in like a month or something."
So
And
you leached off of your coworker.
Yeah.
For
So at
internet.
that time, I just said, "Screw it." I canceled the internet like provider or the install, and then I just used the person above me internet with consent, of course. We split the bill, and then it was cheaper. It was half the price. So
Win-win.
For like still good internet, right?
yeah, for still good internet, but that was so embarrassing. So everyone has those stories, right? Where it's just you get a little whooshed.
Maybe you do need Japanese to survive in Japan, Bethany.
So I would say like bare minimum survival, like you have no Japanese, you're scared to do this program because you think that you don't have enough Japanese background. Like, you can definitely survival Japanese. You can do it.
There are a ton of people who just are on survival mode.
Like, if you want to be independent and, like, for example, let's say you have to go to the doctor and you're in the middle of nowhere and the doctor probably doesn't speak English, or if he does, he might not know the proper way to say like the medical terminology, stuff like that. Like, because I've been to several doctors and a lot of them would try to use a little bit of English just to be kind. Like, if you want to do stuff like that and not need a translator, or if you want to do a phone call and not have to call your supervisor to help you, like when I had to schedule a COVID test, stuff like that, like 100%, like without a doubt, you should definitely study Japanese, like 100% while you're there. At least
it's a really good opportunity for you to become a little jouzu in a language because you're surrounded by it every day. And while it's not your job to be learning Japanese, it's a very good thing to do when you're desk warming.
That is definitely true.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Definitely. And just like going off that, I do feel like of the people I know, the ones that didn't study and knew less Japanese often didn't have as good of a time because they couldn't connect with their coworkers or their students.
People in the community.
Yeah.
Like the chicken shop owner. If I couldn't speak to that guy, I don't know what I would do.
Right. Like, you don't got to be fluent. Just like a little bit of effort goes a long way.
He would give me extra chicken. A little goes a long way, right?
Yeah. And that kind of brings us to the start to when we asked for the best way to actually, learn a language. I know, Bethany, you were saying that those smaller interactions can be difficult if you're just learning a language, like abroad, for example. But I know because we have the opportunity to actually live in Japan, it's probably the best time that you have to further your language skills as well.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You can coast, but it'll be more fun if you just put some effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, they don't understand what you said. Okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Getting over that initial like nervousness about trying to use Japanese when I wasn't so good at it was a definite like speed bump that I had to go over. And like, honestly, once I got over the fear of interacting with people, it was like I was enlightened. It actually like something in me switched and I was like all of a sudden confident. It was very nice.
Well, the nice thing is I mean, I did kind of say that a lot of people will say like jouzu or call you really good at Japanese, but it is their way of like supporting you as well. Like I never had any scenario or experience where someone like mocked me for trying to speak Japanese or like didn't want me to try. Right. So I feel like it's a really like open culture as far as them like realizing your efforts.
Yeah. Although it might get to a situation, I'm going to bring up this story really quickly about a friend. I'll name drop him. His name is Damon. And I was in a taxi with Damon. We were coming back to his apartment from night in Kumamoto City. And Damon and I were just chatting in English while the taxi driver was driving us. And he's like, yeah, man, I'm thinking about leaving. the JET program. It had been 5 years for him, so he had the opportunity to stay if he wanted to find another job. But regardless, he had to leave the JET program. And he's like, honestly, man, if one more person tells me Nihongo jouzu, I'm going to flip. And the taxi driver heard him say Nihongo jouzu and was surprised.
No.
And he's like, oh, you know Japanese. And he's like, oh, just a little bit, like just chotto dake. And the taxi was like, oh, Nihongo jouzu. And he's like,
I mean,
that was the tipping point.
I've been jouzu'd when I wasn't even the one talking.
Like, how do you manage that?
I feel like I grunted once and someone told me Nihongo jouzu.
I did like the Aitsuchi, like the that jouzu too. That happened to me.
Yeah, and they're just like, wow, you're really good.
Which becomes
Culturally
second nature.
jouzu.
Yeah.
I feel like I still do it. I mean, the best way to look at it, like, okay, it's kind of can feel patronizing in a way if you get like Nihongo jouzu, like, oh my gosh, your Japanese is amazing, and you've like barely said anything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really the point. They're just trying to encourage your studying, like to keep you going, because when you're actually really good, you won't get jouzu'd anymore, and people will just talk to you like you're a normal person.
So I real quick to wrap up the language discussion too. I know since hopefully some of yours are maybe thinking about the JET program or doing the application. I know some people might be worried about the actual for the interview portion of the application. There is a Japanese section as well. And so what they tell you for that though is it can't hurt you. So all it can do is it's a chance for you to showcase what you know, and they'll slowly like ramp up the difficulty of the questions to kind of probe your level. But it's an opportunity for you to maybe do a little studying beforehand, but it's also not something you really have to worry about, I would say.
Yeah, the JET program interview, Japanese portion, I did basic flashcards of like, oh, what's your name? Where do you live? Very basic information. And the interviewer started with very basic information questions. And when it got to a point, I think he asked me like, how many books do I read in a week? And I couldn't answer him. I'm thinking back, I know exactly what he said, but that's when he was like, okay, yeah, we're done. It's not something you should be stressed about at all.
Yeah. Because I also remember the first couple questions were really easy. And then the last one that I got to, he said something about like, during this like COVID situation, like, do you think people should be able to travel or something like that? And it was like a bit more complicated. And at that point I just flunked out or something like that. But you'll get to a point.
While we're still a little bit on the language barrier situation, there's a very special story, one of my favorite stories involving Bethany in a way. It's not something that I experienced firsthand, but Bethany, I hear your parents may have had a situation in which they probably would have loved to have known a little more Japanese.
Okay.
Do you want to share the story?
No, I can't. I will preface. Okay, I think if you're in Tokyo or in a bigger city, this probably would not happen to you. This was kind of in the middle of nowhere where this happened, where there's like no foreigners. Just preface. So if you really want to see how far into culture shock and assimilation you've gotten, have your parents come visit you and observe what they do in Japan, and that will tell you exactly.
Yes.
My dad and my stepmom came to visit me, and they stayed in this little hotel. And I showed them the convenience stores and how cool they were, all the food you can get. And I showed
Family
my dad,
Mart.
like 7-Eleven, you can just grab a cup of ice out of the freezer that says latte or whatever. You buy that cup, and then you can go up to the machine and you can make yourself a latte. And he was like, whoa. And it's super cheap too to have a latte. Just like amazed. So they go without me after I drop them off, walk over to the 7-Eleven. My dad goes in the freezer, grabs a cup of ice, buys it, takes the lid off, fills it up with the latte, pushes the machine, drinks it, goes on his merry way.
As you do.
Leaves. As you do.
As one would.
So fast forward to the next day, I think we went golfing or something, and we come back to the hotel, and I drop him off, and all of a sudden I'm getting a text from my dad, like, we are in the back of a police car. This is not a joke. And then it made me think even more, like, this is definitely a joke. And then my dad sends me a selfie of him with 2 police officers and the car in the background. And I was like, what happened? So apparently, so the cup that the latte is in is just a normal cup with ice in it. And it's in a specific section, and it says iced latte. And I think it's in both English and Japanese, but I don't know if because we're in the middle of the Inaka that if it was only in Japanese. But my dad picks a random cup of ice out of the freezer that wasn't a latte. It was just a cup of ice. They're in separate sections. There's cups of ice for lattes, cups of ice just that are cups of ice, and they look exactly the same. They're in the same cup. The only thing different is what it says on the lid, which will say like latte or ice or whatever. So my dad buys the cup of ice, pays for it, but then takes the lid off and puts latte in it. So they accuse him of stealing the coffee because he only paid for the ice. He didn't pay for the coffee.
And this is like 100 yen or something, right?
Yeah, we're talking like maybe $1. Okay. And the guy can obviously see them doing that.
Like the guy at the register?
The counter. Yeah, the guy that owns the store can obviously see them. So I don't know why he didn't just go over to them and be like, hey, you bought the wrong thing. Like, you need to pay the extra $1. But he doesn't. Instead, he calls the police when they leave. And the police call around to all the hotels in the vicinity to find out where the 2 foreigners were staying. And then, of course, one of the hotels knows who they are and is like, yeah, they're staying here. And the police tell them, let us know when they get back.
Interesting.
So as soon as they got back, when I dropped them off, hotel desk, and I'm already had beef with this lady because she wouldn't let me go to their room. So this lady already didn't like me. Immediately turns us in, and they had to go back to the store. They had to pay like a fine. I think it was like $50 equivalent or something for stealing, for theft. And then they had to pay for the latte on the $1, whatever it was, on top of that. And then it left my family. They're like, we're being watched.
That's
just
crazy.
Like completely terrified to make any wrong move.
That is like, that's the quintessential story, I think.
Like the police, they were like laughing, and
that selfie with your dad and the police officers that's such a funny picture.
Yeah. I didn't realize that this was over 2 days as well. That really shows
me neither.
How
they came back the next day.
That's motivated.
I mean, there's like nothing going on.
Yeah, honestly,
in that town. Like if that's what they're gonna put their efforts on.
This probably kept them talking for days.
Right. I mean, it really does. If you want to put a bright spin on it, it speaks to the safety of Japan, where they can afford to worry about the foreigner who accidentally stole $1 worth of coffee, as opposed to you would never hear of that happening in the US.
No, it's crazy.
Ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it was funny to hear about, but I can imagine for them they were probably confused just because
your parents,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Part of situations like that just made me really ready to come home. Because that was in my 3rd year too. I was like, okay, that was kind of ridiculous.
And what have you been doing since you got home?
So I've been teaching. So right now I'm getting my 2nd master's in elementary education, and I'm working in a classroom full time, and I'll have my own classroom by next school year.
Get out of
Finishing up
town.
this master's.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you think your experience on the JET program has helped you or prepared you for this?
Well, what we could really ask, since it is the Deskwarmers podcast, is what were you doing at your desk, Bethany?
What was I doing at my desk during all the free time I had?
Yeah.
I was always doing something. I mean, like my first year, I was so bored. I got a master's in
Insane.
TESOL.
Like online?
Yeah, I did a distance program with ASU.
Uh-huh.
I did that. My
Wow.
second year, probably just like hardcore studying Japanese. Like any free second, I was like reading books in Japanese, like going through. I was studying for N2 and N1 kind of simultaneously, but I was never going to take N1.
You read that book that we ended up seeing a movie for.
Yeah, and then I read the
True.
English translation to like just check what it sounded like in English, and it was like sounded like the Magic Treehouse or something. I'm like, oh my gosh, like for middle schoolers, this is so easy, but it was so hard for me to read.
Yeah, that was
I-
one of the
I-
first movies that I went to see in Japan without subtitles, and I was like,
Yeah, this was Kagami no Kojo. I think it's like Castle in the Sky. I don't know what the English
Mirror?
translation is.
Something with a mirror.
Well, it should be Mirror, but I feel like they translated it different. I don't
probably they
remember.
tend to do that. Just take a look at Wild Speed.
So
Ah.
it sounds like you were pretty productive though, given your time that you had.
I mean, you kind of have to be. If you don't make stuff for yourself to do, it can become really like depressing, not gonna lie. Just like coming in and then doing nothing all day and sometimes nobody speaks to you. Like those are the really tough days. And then you leave and you're like, why did I even go to work?
Mm. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously not to say go do a master's, but it's the best opportunity to study Japanese. And if you're kind of done with studying Japanese, perfect time for another skill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, we talked about that before. It is the Deskwarmers podcast, after all.
Yeah, ultimately, you know, being an ALT, not going to be something you're probably doing forever. For like 99% of people, they're probably going to move on. When you go into it, just try to think of what you want to do when you're done. And you can kind of use your desk warming time to keep building those skills.
No, yeah, that's really well said. It is a large swath of time that you just have at your disposal. So
I
find
mean,
a hobby.
there's like some things about it. Like, yeah, it can be super boring. Sit at your desk all day. And I'd even have like Kyoto sensei like, oh, like taikutsu dane, and that just like means like super boring. And you can't really agree because like it's kind of rude, but sometimes I would and they would laugh. Anyway, I totally forgot what I was talking about. I lost my train of thought with the taikutsu. Yeah, nope, I got nothing.
Oh, that's all right. Well, I mean, we could go for longer, or we could wrap it up. Up to you guys. Bethany, do you have any final things to say, or Ike?
I mean, I could dive into a whole other big bag of stories, but I don't know if we want to. So up to you all.
do you have a one at the very top of your mind?
Well, the only thing I was really thinking about was with all the desk time was, and we were talking about this earlier, but during the summer vacation, and I know at one time, right, where even though there's no students, you still have to be there, right? And so even on those times,
I do remember what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
but I can say it after.
Okay. And what happens even
write it down
is even if there's like a typhoon or something, the teachers still have to go to work.
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
And all the students, they get to stay at home because it's unsafe. If we want to stay at home, we have to use our paid time. So it's a little bit where, sure, we don't have maybe like a full like intensive job, but we still have to be there like the same amount as the other teachers.
It's because we're government workers, and we are expected to work as much as the other, government workers. And the budget is set out at the beginning of the year. The teachers are going to work this many days and we're going to pay them this amount of money. If you don't use your time off, like your vacation days, your Nenkyu, for like a natural disaster, then you're essentially taking a day off at the expense of the taxpayer. Hello? That's not right.
Yeah,
you should be at work. This is one of my biggest gripes. I have a lot to say about this situation. We don't have to go into it all the way, but Nenkyu, paid days off, and the sick leave.
Byokyu.
Also. Byokyu. Yeah,
but you get 10 days, right? Every year of Nenkyu. Was that what
20.
it was? It was 20?
You get 10.
10 to start.
Yeah, 10 the first half of your first year. Then they let you access the other 10 at the second half of your first year. And then if you do it a second year, you just get 20 all up front.
Yeah.
And then depending, I think, where you're at, you can carry some over. I think we could carry over 12.
Yeah, I think it was the same for us.
You can have like up to 32 in your second year, I guess.
And then they also have very different holidays, though, than the U.S. calendar. So
they do have more holidays.
Maybe, but they're not necessarily normal holidays. Like we have to work on Christmas, which is a little depressing. But
I got festive. I wore a Santa hat all day.
You can take an NQ if you want. But Bethany, you had a question or you had a topic as well that you.
It kind of still goes into that. Yeah, I just started I lost my train of thought. But what I was going to say, to put like a more positive spin on the crappy desk warming scenario, is you're still getting paid. Like
you are still getting paid.
100%. You get a full paycheck. Like in the US, in the summers, teachers are not paid. You can, I think you can get your paycheck divvied up in such a way where you're borrowing money from the other 10 months so that you still get paychecks during the summer.
Interesting.
But you're not that's not part of your pay.
Yeah, I told my coworkers in Japan about like a elementary school teacher I had who I would see bagging groceries in the summer, and they were shocked. They were like,
yeah,
you're allowed to have
a ton of teachers
other jobs?
do summer jobs.
Yeah.
And it's really tough too, because since we don't have that summer vacation, we don't really have any larger windows. The only 2 times every year where there's like several consecutive holidays is Golden Week and like New Year's are pretty much the only 2 times where you have a few holidays that line up. And even
those are
then,
usually pretty close to each other.
Yeah. And even then you still have to take some of your paid days off, your Nenkyu, just to get a full week. So those were like the main times that we used to do those travels. But you do have the time that you can take pretty much any time. And I think even at one time I ran out of Nenkyu and my school approved me for unpaid leave because my mom was also visiting. And so I got like maybe 5 days of unpaid leave or something. So that's maybe a unique situation.
Shout out to your mom.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. I still use that chapstick that she gave me.
She's a dentist, so yeah, that makes sense.
Does it?
Yeah, they give out free chapstick.
Do they?
Well, mine do.
I usually get toothpaste from my dentist.
Oh, good.
Bethany, were you going to say something? Please say something.
See, I held back.
Okay.
Maybe off the record.
Okay.
You wanted to...
Should I? Oh, it's about Ike.
Oh.
I think you know where I'm going with running out of Nenkyu.
Oh.
And taking trips to Okinawa.
Oh. this can be on record. It's fine.
Is it fine?
I did use one day of BOQ when I was actually on a plane to Okinawa. And I told them that I could not come to work because I was on the toilet. And
I think that was my idea.
Yeah. And
on the airplane toilet.
I was so stressed because the thing about BOQ, which we haven't really talked about much, which is the sick leave, is for Japanese like workers and stuff. BOQ means hospital leave. And so they think when you take BOQ, you cannot take BOQ for like a cold or flu or something like that. Like you are bedridden.
Mm-hmm.
You're like dying.
You are in the hospital.
You're
like,
getting surgery or
like something bad is happening. And so
major.
I don't think I got sick much. So this was like one of the first times I'd done BOQ, but I told my teachers that I was super sick, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna send a doctor over." They're like, do you need us to come like check on you or something? And I am at the airport, and I am telling them like, no, like I have a friend. They're helping me. Like I took medicine already, and even in Japanese medicine is so weak. So even like any antibiotics or anything, you have to go to the hospital to get. And so they're like in their mind thinking like, this kid doesn't have any medicine. Like, what is he
never went to the hospital,
you know? And I mean, it was one day. I think after 3 days, you do need a doctor's note.
It depends on where you are, like your BOE prefectural situation. Everyone is different.
Yeah.
They leave the rules intentionally vague, or vague, as some people would pronounce it.
Yeah,
Austin. Intentionally vague, and I don't know. Sometimes you need a doctor's note to do it at all.
But I
mean, you should like go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I did make it through that experience though, and no one asked.
No one came to your door.
Yeah,
they just thought you were at home, like, on the toilet the entire day.
It should be in your contract negotiated with the JET program. Like you do not have the same contract as teachers at your school.
You do not.
So a lot of people, like we have other friends on the program that kind of faced some bullying when trying to take sick leave when they were legitimately very sick, and they were trying to make them use their paid leave, which again, you only get 20 days. Those add up quick when you want to visit home, stuff like that. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It is
pull out the contract. Pull out the contract. Keep it handy. Okay. Especially when you're negotiating stuff like that.
Yeah. In their mind, they have a different definition of sick leave where typically in the JET programs, it is more kind of open-ended, I want to say, where it's more up to our discretion whether.
A little bit.
Yeah.
This also depends on where you are and the prefecture. This is Kumamoto case. Or at least most of Kyushu. I remember this quick story about my tantosha at one of my schools. We were teaching a class and he stubbed his toe so hard against like the little step up near the chalkboard. There's like a step up. He stubbed his toe so hard that he fractured it.
Oh my.
And our school, there's like you
Aragorn.
can see the hospital from the window. So like these kids were doing their tests, they were like working on their final projects. And I'm like, Sensei, we could go across the street. I could drive you in my car across the street and drop you off. And he's like, no, I really can't sacrifice the Nenkyu, and I have to be here for the students. This isn't BOQ level, so it's okay. And I'm like, you practically just broke your toe. It's fractured. We don't know the state that it's in. It's hurting. And he's just sitting there in pain. And it was so hard to watch. And he would not take BOQ. He would not take Nenkyu. He just sat there and continued the class. It was kind of metal as all heck. Okay.
I had teachers with like full on like flu, COVID, whatever, just show up. And,
not COVID.
That's disgusting.
And they are so sick though. And I'm like, why are you here?
COVID was the one thing that they were like, hold up.
So it was probably a flu or something, but some of my teachers would just be like coughing and just looked so ill, like sweating and stuff. And I'm like, why are you at school?
They were ill, but like in a bad way, you know?
And
you know what I'm
they
saying?
would just say, they're just like, I just got to get through this last class, you know? And I'm like, we're on 7th period. You've been here all day. Like,
there's definitely like a mask culture that kind of, I think, can go beyond the point of like, it's only going to protect the people around you so much. If you're like completely viral, sneezing, coughing everywhere, the mask is probably not going to stop the people around you from getting sick. But there's kind of like I felt like there was kind of a underlying idea where it's like, I'm so sick, but I wore a mask and I'm still here. Like I'm such a hard worker.
I know teachers who are like that.
I think it's hard, but yeah, I think that was a good explanation though of the overarching system.
Well, our time is running thin, so I'm going to ask this question one more time. Any last final words out of any of you?
I'm good.
Silence from the crowd. Bethany?
Like, final words.
Any shout outs?
Shout out to all the people I met in Japan that
Shout out to your husband reveal.
Shout out to
husband reveal.
My husband. I mean, yeah, I was there 3 years, wouldn't trade it for the world. Was an amazing, life-changing experience, and that's not exaggerating. It really was truly something unique and special to me. And if you're thinking about applying, making the plunge, go for it. What's the worst that could happen?
Do it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Very well said. All right. Well, I guess we're signing off. Thank you so much for listening to episode 3 of the Deskwarmers Podcast. We'll be back next Wednesday at 12 Eastern Time. If you haven't checked us out on Discord, please look at the link in the description. If you're on Spotify, it's probably somewhere. But we have a Discord channel. We'd love for you guys to talk about it, talk about the episode, give us advice in there. If we don't have like a theme song for the podcast yet, you can suggest some songs. I don't know. I was going to make one, but I didn't end up doing that. So anyway, have a good one, guys.
See ya.
See ya.